This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
All our Torah Anytime viewers. Okay, so tonight we're going to be starting to speak about Purim. But it's not. The truth is, it's not only a topic about Purim, it's also a topic that is important, just in general for character trait building. The topic is on happiness and gratitude. Two extremely, extremely important topics. Oh, it reminds me, tonight we're learning L'Refuah Shlema to Yecheskel Ben Tzila. So now, we know that when Adar comes in, it says, Mishenichnas Adar Marbim B'Simcha. When Adar comes in, we increase in our happiness. So the question that is asked, and the truth is, year after year, I really like speaking about this particular subject, about happiness regarding to Adar, because first of all, it's such an important topic, and second of all, there are so many people that are not happy. I don't want to say depressed, even though I could, and it'll be factually correct, but people are just not in the happiness level that they need to be at. When the Torah says and tells us, the Chazal tells us, says, Mishenichnas Adar, when Adar comes in, when the month of Adar comes in, we have to increase in our happiness. Just so that we understand this point, this means that in general, we always have to be happy. It says, Mishenichnas Av Matim B'Simcha. When Av comes in, we decrease in our happiness. But you realize we're always happy. It's just the level of increase or decrease in our happiness. There's an obligation that we always have to be happy. Especially when we do mitzvah. When we do mitzvah, we also have to be happy. So when the Torah comes and tells us, be happy, or increase in your happiness, that's a very, very hard, I was trying to explain it, once let's say you have a really, really good actor or an actress, and you tell them, cry, like on the spot. And let's say they're really good and they're able to make real tears, not like those eye drop tears, like real tears that they're able to produce. Now, how are they able to do that? Let's say they're able to put themselves in a very sad situation in their mind, and they bring themselves to a sad point. But that, in a sense, that doesn't make them sad. It might make them sad for like a moment or two, but it doesn't increase their essence that they're depressed now and sad. Let's say an actor has to be extremely, extremely happy. So they could put themselves in that mindset of being extremely, extremely happy, but it's very temporary. That's not something that stays. It's not something that sticks. So when you're telling somebody, hey, be happy, which is, by the way, the last thing that a person who is sad wants to hear. Oh, you're sad, be happy. Chill out is the last thing that you want to tell somebody who just got into a car accident and has a bat in his hand. Chill out, I chill you. So it's the last thing that you want to do. So the question is, so the Torah says, increasing your happiness. How? How are you supposed to increase in your happiness? The entire human race strives for happiness. And I say that with 100% confidence that this is what people strive for. Religious people, secular people, people that strive for money, people that strive for relationships, people that strive for anything. When you break everything down, the goal of everyone's life is happiness. And you can break it down for anything. You ask somebody why he works, to make money. Why do you want to make money? So I could pay for stuff. Why do you need to pay for stuff? Because I need to live. I need to eat. I need to drink. I need to sleep. I need to have a roof over my shoulder. Why do you need all that? The more that you keep on asking like an annoying 3-year-old kid, right? Why is the sky blue? Why is this? Until you don't have any answers anymore and you're making them up, which hopefully you don't. But you have the concept that you keep on doing the why. Eventually it's going to come all to the one foundation point that is to make me happy. It's going to make me happy. Why are you getting married? Because I love my spouse. No, you don't. You don't love any. It was like, fine, because I love myself. That's more factually correct, which is true. So now that you love yourself, now why do you want to go get married? Because this person makes me feel good. Whatever it is that you go, why do you want to have children? Children is very difficult to upbring, very expensive. Because ultimately, you're going to say you want to give, you want to help, whatever it is that you want to do. The more that you push, eventually comes up because this is going to make me happy. Even religion. You ask somebody, why do you want to be religious? So I need to do it, and I want to do it. It's going to... Push comes to shove, it's going to get you what you want. In the next world, in this world, whatever it is, people have an agenda. Obviously, the highest level is to do something, lishma, which means it's not for any other ulterior purposes. But the majority of people, they do something for a purpose, and that purpose, if you go ultimately, like the top of the line, is going to be happiness. So, what? Yeah, but that's a different subject in itself. I didn't drink here. So when you're going and the Torah says, be happy, there must be something very, very fundamental and important in this topic. And not only that, it's like a month. It's like the whole Mishnechnas Adar. When the month of Adar comes in, you have to increase in your happiness. So I want to share with you something from Reb Shimshon Pincus. Reb Shimshon Pincus goes and says like this. It says that happiness in this world is strongly based on the power of new. That when you have something new, there's a you feel like there's a happiness into it. Now, and he gives, Rav Shimshon Pincus gives an example of someone saying a Dvar Torah. Let's say someone's saying something on the Torah, and you heard this already before. So the person could just say like 3 words, be like, oh, I know this already. I get it all the time. If I say a story that God forbid, chas v'shalom, I have to say, Hashem Baganu, if I ever said the story or joke before again, I have people in the class already, guess what's going to happen. Because if it's something even similar or familiar to what they heard before, they're not interested in it. Oh, I already heard it, it's not anymore. What are people interested? New Torah, fresh, something I never heard before. So it's like, there's something with the newness that we enjoy. It brings us an extra sense of happiness. You think of the concept of phones. So if somebody has this phone and there's an update that comes up, most people, not everybody, I would say 90% of people, a statistic that I just made up, 90% of people would go and would do that update. And in fact, let's use another fake number, 80% of people, I probably shouldn't say that fake number, I could just put that out there, who's going to double check it, right? No, generally, it's good, no, every statistic that I bring down, every research that I do bring down is usually legitimate. I don't know why I say usually, it's always legitimate, except for the stuff that I make up. And this is something that I'm making up. So, usually I don't make it up. So, I always don't make it up unless I say I make it up. Okay, I don't know why I'm digging my hole. Okay, so now, You get the what is it called? The alert that you have an update available. We could update you from 2 to 3 a.m. if you would like. You're like, no, I can't. I need it now. My phone's going to shut down. It's going to go. It has to be right now. How often can people push it off and be like, nah, I don't need it? What? Okay, so you're the 10%. So
I push it off too every time I don't need it.
You have a smartphone?
No,
I'm talking about what? And that's where I'm furthermore going, because all the updates are not beneficial. They do. I don't know about iPhones, but I know updates generally slow the phone down to a certain extent. Maybe they slow the phone down. So why would somebody? It's a very I need to do it. I have people that they break. It's called jailbreaking the phone, if I'm not mistaken, so they could get the update earlier. So they're able to get it early. I'm like, why do you need it so bad? Like people that are really obsessed with it, they destroy their phone internally, the software-wise, just so they be able to get their, the newest update of Google. The newest update, I don't know if you can do it with iPhone. Apparently you can't do anything to iPhone. So, but like in the Google world, you're able to go and you're able to update. But you update it, it doesn't help you. But no, it's something new. It's something that we appreciate. There's something different about it. There's something new that we enjoy. We appreciate it. The same thing with cars. You have a car that is working perfectly well. I'm not talking about just working well and getting from point. I'm talking about luxurious. It has everything that you need. But yet 3 years come up, and we're like, okay, we need something new. But why? Why do you need something new? Everything here is already working and very, very good. Why all of a sudden do we need something new? Because we enjoy, we have this certain type of happiness when we're dealing with something new. Think about clothing for a second. You always think about clothing, but think about clothing right now, right? So when you're going and you're buying another article of clothing, do you need it? You don't need it. You have clothing to wear, but you want it. But why do you want this article of clothing more than you have stuff that maybe are nicer in your closet? But why would you want it? There's something else about getting something new that brings us this power of enjoyment, power of happiness. You also have this concept in restaurants. You have restaurants that are opening and closing. But when they open, sometimes in the beginning, they make a lot of money. Why do they make a lot of money? Because people want to try something new. But you have, let's say, a restaurant that you go to that you're very happy with. The food is good, the service is good, everything is good. It doesn't matter. You'll take a risk and go somewhere else new because it's something new. It's something that I never had before. We're always chasing after something that is new. Says Rabbi Shimshon Pincus, there's a certain happiness when we deal with something new. This is also why we have a bracha of Shehachianu. We make a bracha that if you get, let's say, you eat a new fruit, or you get a new article of significant clothing, you make a shechianu on it. You buy a house, you buy a new house, you make a shechianu. So there's certain things, when you're dealing with something new, there is a special happiness in it that we even attach a bracha to it. Now, the problem with this is that newness doesn't last. There's only a certain amount of new that will last. And I was speaking to the guys last night, and I was telling them there was a certain car company that, if I'm not mistaken, I think it was Cadillac, that you paid an X amount of money, and every certain amount of months, you could just bring your car back into the lot, and you could take another car. So you take a flat fee that you constantly, are able to recycle cars as much, because people like having a new car, a fresh car. So in the winter, you could get a big SUV. In the summer, you get a sports car. In the fall, whatever it is. So people think that you have a lot of cars. Whatever it is that people enjoy doing it, you're paying a hefty price tag for it. But people do it because you're constantly able to recycle your cars. So let's say you're taking someone like that. Let's say somebody doesn't, has one car, gets a new car every 3 years. What do they feel after the third year? They feel okay, feel a little happiness. You got that fresh, car smell. Now they even sell, the fresh car smell. I don't even know what that is. Is that like fresh leather scraped on there? I don't know, whatever they put there, but there's a fresh car smell, and you have the fresh drive, and you're enjoying it. So you get that every 3 years. But let's say you are constantly getting that every few months, like you're doing this deal. So how is your enjoyment going to be? Eventually you're going to get used to it. You're going to get used to even the changeover. You're going to get used to even having something new. This is something known as hedonic adaptation. This means that when you're doing something, eventually you're going to get used to it, even if it's something new. They made a study, this is a very famous study, on lottery winners. How much after they win the lottery do they feel like back to their baseline where it was before they won the lottery? And it came out with a crazy number that it was 18 months. Imagine that. You win $50 million. 18 months later, your baseline happiness is the same happiness as it was 18 months ago, on the average. That's a very, very scary statistic. You have, if we could understand this, imagine somebody goes and has medically, the doctor tells him you cannot have solid food for 2 months. Everything is, I know some people actually do that voluntarily, for cleanses and I don't know, whatever other godforsaken reason that people do this. I don't know what's the difference. So you juice a steak instead of eating a steak. I don't know what it does. But in any case, so the doctor says no solids for 2 months. So you're off solid for 2 months, and then finally you're able to have whatever, pizza, whatever it is, that one solid thing. Imagine that first bite. How much are you going to enjoy that first bite? Now, how about the second bite? It's going to be it's just a little bit less. How about the fifth bite? By the 10th bite and by the 14th slice, when you're already cursing your life, you're not going to feel any difference anymore. You're already used to it already. This is the hedonic adaptation. I like to also use that example of, let's say somebody gets lost in the woods. The person gets lost in the woods, and they have to sleep in the woods, in the jungle woods, whatever, pick your fancy, in the desert even. So imagine falling asleep in the wood. You're leaning against a tree. First of all, you're not going to be able to sleep because your own breathing is going to scare you. But who's there? And every time there's going to be there's going to be a wind, you think that something's crawling up your leg, and everything. Imagine. Put yourself in that situation. Imagine sleeping in a hard, cold floor in the forest with all the bugs, the rats, the other animals, whichever woods you're going into, that are there. Bears, like a very serious thing. And imagine you're stuck there for 3 nights. You're barely sleeping, you're barely able to focus, and then finally you get rescued. And when you get rescued, you go and you take your hot shower, and then you go sleep in your bed. Now you're going to sleep in the bed. You're going to fall asleep right away, and you're going to appreciate that bed. But the next night, are you going to appreciate that bed? Yeah, maybe. But about a week later, you're back to your baseline that you're not appreciating it. You're not enjoying it as much as you did it the first time. This concept of enjoyment, this concept of pleasure, this is something we spoke about before. What is the pleasure in the world to come? In Olam Haba, what is the pleasure that you get? So Rav Dessler explains this, that imagine, and this is a very important concept to understand. We spoke about this a long, long time ago, but I think it's very, very important to review this, to understand what we're dealing with when we're dealing with reward in the world to come. What is reward in the world to come? Like what? You're going to have it, not like the Muslims say that there's going to be a certain amount of doesn't say woman, just says virgin. The virgin's going to be, over there. Like what? Like that's a very, very physical type of pleasure. We're talking about something else in its entirety. Rav Dessler goes and explains like this. Imagine in life. In life, we have pleasures that are sporadic. We'll have like good times, we have bad times, we have neutral times. Imagine you take all your good times and you combine it to one moment, and then you take that pleasure. Imagine you put it into a pill. And you take that pill. Imagine the pleasure that you have your entire life, from the moment that you were born until the day that you die at 120. You take all the pleasure that you have in your life, and you take that pill. How much pleasure are you going to have? Like a crazy, crazy amount of pleasure. Now it says Rav Dessler, imagine you take your entire, let's say it's the entire Brooklyn. There's a lot of people here, right? You know what? Let's skip a step. You take entire New York. There's a lot of people in New York, right? How many people are in New York? No one cares. Okay, so there's a lot of people in entire New York. You take all that, and the entire life, all their pleasures that they had. You take all the bad, all the neutral, you take it out. You take only the pleasures of all the blank amount of people that live in New York, and you take that pill. That's probably going to explode your brain. You're probably going to die from pleasure. You're not even able capable to hold that in. But imagine you take people from the entire America, like, what is it, 400 million people, let's say? 400 million people, only the pleasures that they had, and you take that in one moment. Can we stop for a second to like picture how much pleasure that's going to be? And if you can, think about the pain side. Think about how much pain that's going to be if you do it from the pain side. Then flip it to the pleasure. Imagine how much pleasure you're dealing with. Then goes, says Rav Dessler, says, imagine you take everybody in the world, taking 7 billion people, right? You take 7 billion people, from the moment that they're born to the moment that they die, every single part of their pleasure, you combine everything. You suck it out of it. You have this crazy machine, right? You suck it out of that, you put it into one machine, out comes a little blue pill, and then you pop it, and then you die. But I'm saying you have for like a moment of pleasure. But I'm saying you imagine you're able to take that pleasure. Can we anticipate how much pleasure that is? So that's one more step. Imagine taking everybody ever alive on planet Earth, from the beginning of creation until the end of creation, taking only their good, leaving every bad out, every neutral out, taking only the pleasure that they had, combining it into one moment, putting it into a pill, popping it in your mouth. Imagine how much pleasure that's going to be. It says Rav Dessler, all that doesn't even come close to one moment in Olam Haba. Let me repeat that so that you're clear with what we're dealing with over here. The entire world, everybody that was ever created, all their pleasures, they put it into one ball, one moment, and you take that one moment, it doesn't even come close to one moment in Olam Haba. Now, what type of moment in Olam Haba? There's levels of Olam Haba. What type of moment? Says Rav Dessler, imagine you have a poor person walking past by this kitchen, and out comes a little smell of what's baking in that kitchen. And you smell it, it smells good. Then your mouth starts watering, and you're excited yourself. Why you take this route now? You're going to lose your diet, whatever it is, right? We know the whole story. So, but you're going and you're enjoying that smell. You know that smell. You know that you walk past by a bakery, it always smells better than it tastes for some reason, right? You go and you smell that, and you enjoy that. You appreciate that. That's the pleasure that we're talking about. Imagine someone goes in the next world and just walks past by Olam Haba. Not even going inside Olam Haba. Just walking, obviously it's not like a, it's like Olam Haba entrance, but imagine, picture this. You walk past by Olam Haba and there's a little whiff that comes out and you have that enjoyment. That enjoyment is greater than all the enjoyment of everybody that was ever created, that ever lived in the entire creation of the world combined in one moment. So do we understand what we're dealing with over here? But now we have to understand. You have a question? Yeah.
Is this written somewhere? Like, how do we know that that's the
I figured that's what you were going to ask. I did not. So how do we know these things? So the way that we know anything is because that's the Torah. And how do we know things from the Torah? This has been Mishnah and Pirkei Avot. This is a Mishnah and Pirkei Avot. How do we know so how do we know the Torah? How do we know the oral law? It's because it was given to Moshe Rabbeinu. So now, the same way that we know many things that we can't count, the people have this question when, let's say, people start speaking about Gehenom, about hell. How do we know about all this stuff? That's where you have a question. That's where you have a problem. How do we know we're supposed to keep 613 commandments? How do we know that? You don't ask by that. Why you ask by this? Because they see it as something else. Like, if it doesn't say it straight out in the Torah, then it must be that it's not there. But no, it's in the oral law. And now the oral law, it's more available because it became written after Yehuda Nasi wrote it down and put it. I didn't write it down. He put it together. So you have also a lot of things that are more available, in a written format. But everything that we have, it's not just somebody who just we're deciding to be like, what's going to sound really good. Let's do this. Or someone inventing some things. You're not allowed to do that in the Torah. So the Torah is everything that is brought down is brought down because there is a source and it comes straight from God. Okay, so now. Now think about this concept on Olam Haba. So let's say you get to Olam Haba, and not let's say, in Me'at Hashem, when we all get to Olam Haba, right? You go over there and you have the first moment of pleasure. It's going to be crazy, unbelievable. We just spoke about it. But what about the second moment? There's a newness to it. And what happens to the newness? You take a steak, you take the first bite, it's delicious. You take the second bite, a little bit less. The third bite, a little bit less. By the fifth and sixth bite, you're crying already because you broke your, whatever it is. Right? We're not going to go into the, right? So your enjoyment is decreasing as you participate in that particular pleasure. What's going to be Olam Haba? So, says Rav Shimshon Pincus, in eternity, in the time there, it's something that goes on forever. But what's going to happen? Every moment is going to be greater in pleasure than the previous moment. Which puts us on a whole nother, so which means that every moment is going to be like a new moment. That's the only way that you're going to have, that you're going to be able to have the ultimate type of pleasure. Because even if you have the highest level of pleasure ever, eventually you're going to get used to it. And it's not going to be new. But it's not going to be like that. It's something that it's going to be continuous, that it's going to be new again every moment. So now when we understand that could make sense in the spiritual world, but in the physical world, nature, there's a limit to nature. And that's why, by the way, when you look at the Torah, someone who's learning a Torah, someone who's learning a page of Gemara, and he learns it for the 100th time, he still enjoys it. I don't know anybody who could read the same page of chemistry the 100th time and be like, oh, I still enjoy it. There's nothing new that you're learning, but when you're learning the Torah, there's always chidushim, there's always something new that comes out of it. Now, when I speak to people, let's say that are in relationships, or let's say they're dating, I think I get this more by men, but I've been recently getting it a lot also from women also. There's a very, very common, annoying statement, well, maybe there's something better out there. You ever heard this? Yeah. So you're dating somebody, and this person, goes and you say, like, listen, I don't know, maybe I could do better. Maybe there's something better out there. So I usually ask them, are you happy with what's going on right now? It's like, yeah, I'm pretty happy. So I said, what's the problem then? Says, no, but maybe there's something better. I'm saying, you're not looking for something better. You're looking for something new. You're looking for something different. If everything's okay, obviously, if there's no connection, there's a thousand things in between that could fall apart. But if everything is perfect and you think you could do something better, the first thing I tell them is, guess what? You can't. Do you know how much of a loser you are? Like, it's a good thing you came to me. Here's the things about, like sometimes, there was a story that there was a woman who, she was a good girl, and after a long period of time, she decides she's ready to date. And she goes and she dates, and the first person that they she gets set up with is somebody who is like the Hunchback of Notre Dame looks good compared to this person, right? So and quality, character, everything. And she's like, "Are you kidding me?" It's like, what's going on? If he goes a date and be like, I can't believe this is what people said. This is what shidduch dating is all about. This is what they set me up with over here. What is going to be ringing bells over here? Like, what's going on? So she goes and she says no, and then she's, obviously you start getting picky. Eventually she gets set up with another guy. And this guy, she goes out with him, and he's a mediocre guy. Like a regular, normal, just plain mediocre. Like a very, very medium, type of guy. I don't know what the terminology of it. Average, thank you. Average type of guy. So it's like, okay, listen. Compared to the other guy, whatever. He's he's worlds of different, but he's still average. But you know what? Let me take another shot. Eventually, they're dating for a certain period of time that everything seemed to work well, and they end up getting engaged and end up getting married. A while goes by, and she contacts the person that set her up with the first hunchback, and it wasn't a hunchback, but I'm saying like ki'ilu. And she goes and she says, I want to thank you. Says, if I wouldn't have gone out with him first, then when I would have went out with my husband, I would have never said yes. I think I deserve better. I think I had a high. But now I see this is perfect for me. Everything is great. Everything. There's a rabbi that says that when some Israeli rabbi, I forgot who it was, maybe it was Rabbi Yitzchak Fanga, I don't remember. He says he doesn't like to say that it's perfect in other people's marriage, because then be like, wait, someone else is better than mine? He says, who's perfect? No one's perfect. Everyone has their issues, right? But it was a good marriage, and she realized that if she would not have gone out with the first, let's call him Shlomazel loser person, then she would have never ever continued with her current situation, because she put herself down. Because if we constantly think, is there always going to be something better, we're never going to be able to go, and we're never going to be able to actually tie down to a very good, or your perfect soulmate, situation. But what happens when people say that? It's because they're looking for something new. They're looking for something different. Even furthermore, when we're speaking about something new and something different, it changes the way that we behave. Let's say let's say somebody has a very, very wild child, and the child's running. What happens when a guest comes into the house? The first time they see the guest, they're a little bit well behaved, because it's a new situation. The second time they see the guest, they're like, okay, a little bit less, well behaved, but eventually they get used to it. But when something new, they appreciate it. They're able to keep themselves in control. I remember maybe it's a week or two ago on Shabbat, I was walking past by a husband and a wife and a little baby. And the little baby was laying flat on the floor. Many people don't carry with their Ruva in Brooklyn, so they weren't obviously carrying. So they were trying to, speak to the baby. If you stand up right now, I'm going to buy you blah, 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 right? So they were trying to, and the baby was just standing on the floor over there, and it was relaxing. It was in a very puffy coat that seems to be very comfortable, and it was just sitting over there. If I wasn't in a rush, so all I told them was good luck. And they were like, thank you. So if I wasn't in a rush, what I would have offered, I'd be like, you walk away. Let me all of a sudden take the baby, and I'll walk with. I'm not going to take the baby. Relax. But, I'll bring him back to you when he's 18 years old. Problem is, probably say, all right, thanks. But what happens if no one's away and a stranger all of a sudden says, hey, why don't you come up? I'm going to walk with you. No. They run up and they run away to their mom and dad. They run away to their parents. Why? Because there's something new. There's something different. We behave different. If there's someone who's an abusive spouse, in public, generally, no one's going to go and start being abusive to somebody else in public because, it's different. It's new. You can't do that. Even the way that we treat our new items versus our old items. I can speak this because I know a lot of guys who get new cars, right? A lot of my students, this is their age, they're dealing with the cars. So, what happens when they get a new car? First of all, it is their baby. They have a special rag that they clean. Their room and their house looks like a tornado went through it, a few times. But their car is spotless. They have the duster thingy, and then they have a rag, and then they have a spritzer over there. Everything is good. No one's allowed to walk. You're acting so. What happened? Go to that guy 1 year down the line. There is crumbs under the seat from the last day after Pesach was over, right? He has everything already saved up, whatever. Once it's not new anymore, you don't appreciate it. You have a new expensive dress, and you get a rip in it. You're like, oh, this is ridiculous. You get so upset. But let's say you had that dress for 17 years. But it's still expensive. It doesn't bother. It doesn't hurt so much when it's not new anymore. By the way, the same thing goes in dating. In dating, you're in a new situation, so you're always on your best behavior. But the second that you get used to the other person, then all of a sudden, your guard comes down a little bit, and then the true you really comes out. So when we're dealing with new, there's something very, very different when we're dealing with newness. There's an extra happiness on newness. So what does newness have to do with Purim? Says Rab Shimshon Pink is something so fascinating, so beautiful. What happened on Purim? On Purim, there was a decree. The decree was that the entire Jewish nation was supposed to be destroyed, killed, men, women, and children, old, young, everybody on one day. Now, Chazal tell us this is not only a decree down here. This was a decree also in heaven. God also decreed that the Jewish people should be destroyed. It was decreed, it was stamped. By the way, how did the Jews seal that? From the party. What's the problem going to a kosher party? I don't know. Read the story of Purim. So, unless you want to fast for 3 days, which they did after the party, so maybe, So in any case, the decree was spiritually that the Jewish people were going to be destroyed. Now, in heaven, God, there's no time. God sees the past, present, and future all at once. If there's a decree, even though the decree was not in blood, it was lo badam, it was not with blood, but still it was a decree. And obviously, so it's like a lesser type of a decree, but it was still a decree nonetheless. So when God puts a decree, stamps a decree that the Jewish people are supposed to be destroyed, guess what? They die. There's no Jewish people anymore. Meaning that because there's no time, so the second there's a decree is put out there, everything happens instantaneously. So now, what happened? In this world, the Jews did the tshuva, whatever, they were able to go, and the decree was revoked. So what happened in the next world? It wasn't okay. No, all of a sudden the Jews were spiritually, clinically dead. But then all of a sudden, the decree was revoked. That is in essence a tchiyat hametim. It's a resurrection of the dead. The Jews were resurrected, meaning that they died and now they became back to life. This is why, by the way, in Purim, it says kimu v'kiblu. Kimu mashe kiblu kvar. The Jews accepted the Torah. Why they accepted? Why they didn't accept it? What they already accepted before. Why did they accept the Torah already? We did it already in Har Sinai. But the answer is because you died. You are in spiritual death. It was decreed that you're going to die, and now all of a sudden you're coming back to life. You're coming back to life. You have to re-accept the Torah. So they had to re-accept the Torah. So the happiness. What is the happiness of Purim? The ultimate happiness. You know who's new? You're new. You weren't supposed to be here. On Purim, every single one of us was decreed to die. And all of a sudden, we come back to life again. What better enjoyment do you have in newness? What better appreciation do you have when you're dealing with your own life that it comes and gets saved? We have to though understand this. There's a pasuk in Kohelet, chapter 1, verse 9. Ve'ein kol chadash tachat hashemesh. There is nothing new under the sun. So when there's nothing new under the sun, meaning that everything that was is everything that will be, there's nothing new under the sun. So how can we stay into this happiness? When we are dealing with happiness, we're not supposed to deal with the happiness in a small little, like an actor is acting in the happiness, feels happy, and then 2 minutes later they need to be on antidepressants again. No, when you mean happiness, it means that you have to physically feel different, you have to physically feel happy. So what is the happiness over here if Shlomo Mel tells us there's nothing new under the sun? So how can we keep this up? So we want to go and discuss tonight regarding the concept of gratitude. Now, there's different levels of gratitude, which we're going to try to tackle. if somebody was supposed to die and then they came back to life, they have a different appreciation on life. And that appreciation can bring a person to happiness. I want to share with you some studies. These are legitimate studies. I have to make that clear. Harvard put out an article that gratitude is strongly associated with greater happiness. And there was studies and studies done that gratitude increases the dopamine and the serotonin levels, which is the feelings of contentment that goes on in your brain. It makes you feel better about yourself. It makes you feel happier about yourself when you're more grateful. So if you're more grateful, it has a physical change on your body. It changes the way that you perceive things. It changes the way that you feel. Which means is if you tell someone thank you, you're thinking, okay, fine, I'm being nice. No. You're being nice to yourself. You're making yourself feel good. It's like a drug. If you do it enough, it could be gratitude junkies. Hey, thank you so much. Hey, you come in. Thank you. That if we would really appreciate what gratitude does, we'll just thank everybody nonstop because it really changes the way that we perceive things and it changes the way that we feel. There was researchers from the University of California and the University of Miami that they did a study on people that expressed gratitude for 10 consecutive weeks, and they saw that their optimism level rose up. Now, their gratitude and optimism, you would think they're not so much related. But they saw when a person is grateful, their level of optimism was raised. And Harvard University made a study that one life-lengthening trait is optimism. So for people that always go and be the half the glass empty people, you're signing your sentence, according to Harvard, for an early death, early termination. Right? If you want to have a long life, you have to be optimistic, which we know is all based on the foundation of emunah and bitachon as well. But when we think about how important it is to be, optimistic, there was a study done that on relationships that if you're more grateful to your spouse or to any relationship, that relationship grows stronger. And they had so many studies on this that even to the extent that if you're grateful to your spouse or to any other relationship for that matter, then there's a close connection that's bound. I'm not talking about grateful just in your mind. I'm saying you verbally verbalize the gratefulness. And when you're doing that, there's a closer connection that you build because of that. Now, there was one of the longest studying on human development ever created, studied, done. It's still ongoing. It's on its 75th year, and it was tracking the life of 724 men. And year after year, they asked about their work, their home lives, their health, and they were trying to determine what makes them have a meaningful and healthy life. And to date, I think there's about 60 of them that are still alive out of that first 724. But they still, they continued, the study with more baby boomers. They're continuing the study, and they found something that relationships play a very, very strong role in your happiness. And to the extent that Harvard University said that the number one predictor of health and happiness in a person's life is the quality of their relationships. And how do you build on your relationships? Gratitude. Gratitude builds on your relationship, which means is if you have the capabilities of being grateful, that will make your relationship stronger, and hence you will have a very much more successful and happier life. And let's see how it relates to Purim. There is a mitzvah of Bikurim. Bikurim is where you bring the first ripened fruit to Yerushalayim and you present it to the Kohen. Now there's a midrash in Bereshit that speaks about when the Torah says Reshit, it means that the world was created for the sake of Reshit. What was Reshit? So it gives you three different ideas on Reshit. Number one is the Jewish people. Yisrael, the Jewish people are known as Reshit. Number two is the Torah. The Torah is also known as Reshit. Number three is Bikurim. Bikurim is also known as Reshit. Now, says the Al-Shech HaKadosh, says what's so big about the Bikurim that we are putting that in the top three? Bikurim, again, you're bringing the first fruit to the Kohen. This is what makes it to the top three on the list. Why is this so important? Says the Al-Shech, because the mitzvah of Bikurim contains something that is a very fundamental for being a proper human being, and that is the mitzvah of gratitude. Because when you're bringing the Bikurim, when you're bringing it over here, it is also accompanied by a declaration of expressing one's gratitude to God. That God gave you fruits. Now you're bringing it to the Kohen and you're expressing gratitude. So fundamental is gratitude that it made it up to the top three. The Rambam in Hilchot Yesodei HaTorah brings down also that in order to attain love and fear of God, you have to go and you have to look at the world and you have to see the great deeds that God does and you have to appreciate it. And when you appreciate it and you contemplate it, the more that you do it, it's going to bring you to fear and wisdom. It's very, very fundamental to be grateful. So much so that our sages teaches us that God goes and exacts retribution for ingrates. People that are not grateful, are very, very problematic in God's eyes. To the extent that Pirkei de Rabbi Eliezer says that nothing is harder for the Almighty to live in as it is to live with an ungrateful person. Now, when we look at Adam HaRishon was exiled from the Garden of Eden. One of the reasons was because of ingratitude. What was the ingratitude? What did Adam HaRishon say? The woman that you gave me is the one that gave me the food, the fruit from the tree. The woman that I gave you, it says, I did you a favor. I gave you a woman that, have an ezel kinegdo. You have something that was beneficial. It says even that Adam asked for it. It says now that you asked for something, and it says the woman that you gave me, you're not grateful for it? Kisht. Out of Gan Eden. Also in the Midbar, how did the Jewish people anger God over there? They said, remember the good old days when we were in Egypt. He says, what a good old days. I saved you from Egypt. I took you out of Egypt. But you're not grateful? If someone who's not grateful, the Midrash goes on and says that someone who's not grateful is as if they had the kfirah. Kfirah beikar means they had fundamental theological denial of God. That's what it deals when you're ungrateful. Imagine this scenario. There was a guy who, let's call him Shlomo. And this guy, Shlomo, he loves nature. He found out that there was a 3-day hike in a crazy, in the Amazon jungle, like really somewhere crazy, very, very rare. You see like crazy scenes, crazy sights. He was so in love with the concept of nature. He told his wife, he says, that's it. I'm booking this thing. We're going. It's a once in a lifetime opportunity. They go over there. They hike for 3 days straight. They go on a crazy that no one else will ever take them. So they go and they book it. Now there's one thing about this Shlomo that he was very, very meticulous and particular about time. If his wife was 5 minutes late, she knew she had to close all the windows because stuff is going to go down over here that's going to be bad for the grandchildren's shidduchim. That's how bad, because if it didn't come on there, the Japanese are like that, also yekim are like that, everything, you have a yekim, right? So if something is called, if there's a wedding that's called for 8 o'clock, he's there at 8 o'clock, right? Sfaradim and whatever it is, Sfaradim and certain Hasidim, if it's called for 8 o'clock, they're there sharp at 10:15, right? They're sharp, and expecting to make it to the chuppah, and they usually do. There's certain people very, very meticulous. You have to be strictly on time. If somebody made him wait even 5 minutes, his blood pressure would boil. He felt like steam would be coming out of his ears and nose. It was a situation. Let's just leave it at that. So they fly down to, wherever it was near the jungle over there, and they take a jeep over there. They start out the tour. Now, the first morning, day one, people are getting ready. Now, the tour guide said, listen, he says, one thing we need to have here very, very clear. He says, we're packing in a lot of things happening in 3 days. If we're not exactly on time on schedule, he says, we're missing very, very important things. Shlomo goes to his wife and says, I like this guy already. He says, the first morning, people are getting ready. They were supposed to leave 8 o'clock sharp. It's 8:05. So Shlomo's pacing already, right? He's using his deep breath. He's starting to talk to himself. The normal stuff that people that have anger issues do. So he's walking back and forth. He's like, it's 8:05. What am I going to do? He's cracking his knuckles. He's, cracking his neck. He's cracking his back. I'm just doing that because I need to crack it. Okay, so he's going and he is fuming. 20 minutes go by. Finally, everybody is ready except for one person. And he's like, you have got to be kidding me, right? His jaws are clenching. He has his TMJ acting up. He is really in another whole world. Finally, 25 minutes goes. He's like, that's it. He barges into this guy's tent and he says, how dare you? What are you sleeping? It's 25 minutes. We're all waiting for you. Who do you think you are? And this guy, enjoyed the snooze button a little too much. And he's like, oh, I'm so sorry. He runs. He folds up his tent and he runs out, still slipping on his coffee while he's running out. Now, this guy, Mike, who tends to enjoy his snooze button, was somebody who intends to enjoy his snooze button all the time. Now, day one, that's what happened. Day two, everybody's getting ready. Says this day, he was very jam-packed. Day two, 7 a.m., everybody has to be up. So what happens? 6:55, Shlomo is waiting there with his packed bags. He's sitting there and he's waiting. And it comes 8 o'clock, pacing begins. 8:05, everybody's gathering. 8:10, everybody's there except for one guy, Mike. Mike is sitting over there. He's enjoying himself. He's in the snooze button. And he's going back and forth. And he's like, oh, you got to be kidding me. He's starting this talking to himself. And then finally he goes and he barges open to the door, to Mike's tent. He's like, 2 days in a row. Are you kidding me? 2 days? Do you know? Who do you think you are? You have to make everybody wait over here. Now, at this point, everybody knew you don't mess with Shlomo, right? if the time comes, you're there. Otherwise, you have him to deal with. So it was a situation that, that he built himself a reputation in a very short period of time that people were scared of him. So they're going on day 2. It was a very, very, heavily, filled up trip. And they get to a certain point where the tour guide gathers everybody around and he says, listen, this is one of the most, extreme parts of the trip. He says, here we're going to split. You can either come with me or you can either come with my assistant. He says, if you come with me, we're going on an extremely, extremely dangerous route. That this route, if you slip and fall, it's automatic death. Nobody ever, you're walking on an edge and you have to hold onto a wire and it's a very thin wire. He says, like you guys signed this waiver before you came in and in case you die, you can't sue anybody. But this is where this is why we want you to decide for this particular situation. So, generally what happened was the woman went with the assistant, and most of the men went with the, I'm a man. Nothing scares me. So that's how they split. Obviously, you had a few, stragglers that went onto each side, and they're traveling, and they get to the point where the cliff. This is where if this is where you tell if you're a man or if you're a boy. And a few men looked over there and said, I'm sorry, we're boys. We're going back. They're like, I don't care we're not doing this. You're talking about a heavy drive. Like, we don't need it. So they went back to the assistant and they took the other route with the more feministic route. So they went and there was a few people. Shlomo was there. His wife said, I'm not doing this. I'll meet you on the other side. And Shlomo and a few other guys took this thing. He's like, listen, this is why I came here for. This is supposed to be the best moment. This is something that would be life-changing. So they're going, and the instructor is telling them, he says, listen, guys, he says, there's absolutely no photographs. Your hands are always on the wire, always on the foot. You take one step and one step. You're holding on at all times. You are not doing anything but holding on and walking as I say. Everyone's okay, we understand, and they start doing it. And they start walking in it. I don't know if you guys ever walked on ledges before. I hope you didn't. But if you did, you realize the fear that you have when you're literally walking over there and there's stories that could fall down. This is like instant death. So there is a serious consequence that deals with it. And they're doing it, everything is working fine. Then they're going on the cliff and they're going around the edge, around the bend. And when they go around the bend, they see something, and this is the view. This is the view that everyone talks about. This is unbelievable. This is the whole point of the trip. You see like waterfalls, and it's a crazy, crazy, crazy view. Shlomo turns around, he sees this, and he's like, oh, it's a photo opportunity. Those people that own an Instagram account? It's a photo opportunity. So he's like, I need to. And he's looking back and forth. The tour guide is all the way up in the front. He's close to the back. There's only a few people behind him. He says, I got to do it. He takes out his phone and he starts taking some pictures. And he's like, this is crazy. This is unbelievable. And he's taking pictures. And then while he's taking a picture, he only has one hand on the wire, and he's taking the picture. And as he's taking the picture, the phone, sort of fumbles out. Now, the phone fumbled up, like upwards somehow. And what he did was, he tried to catch it. And then there was like a split second. There's a split second where you're like, oh, I messed up. Oh. So he tried to grab the phone, but then he realized that his other hand is not on there. And he was like on a slowly tilt. And he like he freeze, and he just started screaming. He just started screaming, and everybody else was looking at it. They were all like, they were crazy, frozen. And, in this particular like path, there were vines that were hanging down. And the tour guide said, make sure you hold on to the wire and not to the vine. Some vines are very strong, some vines are very weak. Be very, very careful that you're holding on only to the wire. At this point, Shlomo is not holding on to anything. And in slow motion, in the cartoon style, he's slowly tilting over, screaming. Meanwhile, Mike was 2 people behind him. He sees all this happening. Somehow he grabs a vine, and he swings out from 2 people, and he just pushes him back onto grabs onto him, and they both fall back onto the wire. And Shlomo's sitting over there. By the way, at this point, the phone fell to the extent that as he came back already, the phone was still falling. And then they walk up and they made a little, sound where everything went into 1,000 pieces. And Shlomo's sitting over there with his hands, and, Obviously, he urinated already. So, he's sitting over there, and he's walking like this, and then he's taking, this is the amount of, it took him like an hour just to get back. He was shaking, the tour guide everybody had to go. He had to come back and had to hold him and be like, okay, come. He was shaking in his pants. Afterwards, all the men get back, together, and they say, listen, they say now you see why you're not supposed to take any pictures. But I'm going to ask you guys, please, a favor. Do not mention this to the group, because if the group hears about this, they're going to, be scared. Let's leave this to the end. Let's keep this on the down low. Meanwhile, Shlomo's in a fetal position, praying to God, and not sure what to do. It took him a while to finally get it, his composure back. He goes over to Mike and says, he thanks him, and he says, I can't begin to, thank you for everything that you have done, and they continue on the tour. They get to, the tour, they continue the guide, and the day finishes. The day finishes, they go to sleep. Day number three. The tour guide says, listen, he says, today everybody has to be up at 6 o'clock sharp. We have a full packed day, and he says we have to go, everything has to be exactly on time. So 6 o'clock, everybody's up. Shlomo's up, he's got his bags over there. Everybody's up except for who? Except for Mike. So they're waiting over there. Shlomo's sitting there, calm as a cucumber. He's not pacing. 6:05. Finally, 6:25 comes. Mike is still not coming out of his tent. So somebody comes over to Shlomo, because he's a designated annoying person. He says, listen, 6:25. Shlomo says, oh, is it? Yeah, would you look at that? Okay, thank you. And he sits there, relaxed and calm. 10 minutes go by, it's 6:35. Another guy comes over to Shlomo and says, hey, listen, it's 6:35. If we don't leave now, we're going to miss a lot of things. He's like, oh, isn't that right? Yeah, I guess you're right. Wow. Okay, thank you for letting me know the time. And they're like, what has gotten into him? What's going on? They don't know what's going on with him. Finally, 45 minutes goes by. Mike is still in his tent. And finally, one guy goes up, and he says, that's it, I had it. He drops his bag, he storms up right up to Mike's tent. Meanwhile, Shlomo jumps up, runs right in front of this guy, stops him right in front of Mike's tent. And he says, where do you think you're going? He says, I'm going to wake up Mike. He's so late. He's making us late again. He's like, do you know how hard this guy works? He's so tired. Let him sleep. Why are you going and you bothering him? He says, what is going on with you? He says, it's 45 minutes late. You would have had a heart attack yesterday by this point in time. How are you not waking him up? He says, Mike is tired. Let him rest. Relax. Gosh, what's so uptight, you guys? And finally they were like, what's going on with you? What's different? Finally, Shlomo goes and says, listen. He says, this guy, Mike, yesterday, he saved a person's life. He says, and it was my life that he saved. So if you want to wake Mike up, you got to go through me. Everybody sat down, held their stuff, and were relaxed. And he was standing guard in Mike's tent. Right? I don't know, 10 minutes later, Mike wakes up with all the screaming. He gets out of his tent, he wakes up, he's like, what time is it, guys? Meanwhile, Shlomo runs over to him. You like some eggs? How did you sleep? Is everything okay? He's like, what can I do? You need a massage? I'm a professional shiatsu massage. What do you need? What's going on? How are you? And so the question is, what changed? What changed? It's the same guy, woke up the same late. What changed? The answer is one thing. He had gratitude now. He had gratitude. When he had gratitude, he became more grateful. He became less upset. The concept that we were resurrected. Comes Purim, we had Tchiyat HaMetim, says Rav Shimshon Pincus. We became resurrected back from life. What does that mean? It says, you know how happy you are? Nothing can make you sweat. Nothing can bother you. Are you kidding me? I'm so happy to be alive. You're so happy to be alive. Of course you'd be happy. Of course, we just got resurrected. What is not to be happy about? The proper attitude, if you want to have the best marriage possible, be grateful for your spouse. Because if you're grateful for your spouse, you're never going to get angry at that person. You always have to feel that you married up, even if you married down. And if you married down, then make yourself feel. What I mean is that there's, I think you guys know what I'm talking about. Okay, fine. So when you're going and you feel that you got the better end of the deal, like, I can't believe my wife married me. Does she know how much of a loser I am? Like, why would she do that? What's wrong with her? The second that people say that, why does he like me so much? What's wrong with him? Go to therapy if you're saying that, right? So, but generally, speaking, you always are supposed to feel that you got the better end of the deal. I can't believe how lucky I am that I got to marry my spouse. Because when you're doing that, you're going to be so grateful. If you're grateful, then there's nothing bad that ever could happen. Okay, so your spouse messed up one time. All right, what's the big deal? She married me, or he married me. Like, what's the big deal? Like, it's crazy the level that it's going to change. This is what comes Purim. The highest level of gratitude is when you come to a point and you realize that you don't deserve it. When Leah named her fourth child, what did he name her fourth child? She named her fourth child Yehudah. Why? Because the pasuk says in Genesis chapter 29, verse 35, Hapam odeh et Hashem. This time I'm going to thank God. Why is this time she's thanking God? She made a simple calculation. There's supposed to be 12 tribes, right? The Ima'ot knew that there was supposed to be 12 tribes. Now, 12 tribes, 4 wives. Simple math, 12 divided by 4, 3 kids per wife. All of a sudden, Leah gets a fourth. She feels that she gets something that she didn't deserve. She feels that she gets something that she wasn't anticipating. She says, wait a minute, now she's able to name her son Yehudah. Now I could be thankful for God in a way that I wasn't able to be thankful before. Because when you realize, when you appreciate that you don't deserve something and you get something, it's a whole different level of appreciation. We are known as Yehudim. Because one of our fundamental purposes is that we need to be grateful. The first thing that we do when we wake up, we say, Modeh ani, I am grateful to you, God, for returning my soul. This is a fundamental aspect of being a Jew, is to be grateful. You have to really focus on yourself and really look into yourself. If you're not a grateful person, you have to stop everything that you're doing and focus 100% of why am I not grateful. You're going to lose in this world and you're going to lose in the next world. Now we can understand a little bit about the significance of Amalek. We're almost finishing. Amalek, Timcha Ezecha Amalek. We come in, in this season, if we can call it. You eradicate the memory of Amalek. What was Amalek? Before Amalek, there were 2 schools of thought. 2, guys. Yeah, 2. 2 schools of thought. Number 1, there is a God. Number 2, there are many gods. There is nothing. Right? This is like a new, invention. Well, Amalek really came into it. But before Amalek came, there was 2. It's either one God or many gods. The Jewish, theology, the Jewish thought process, one God. The non-Jewish, very, very common practice was there was multiple of gods. Comes Amalek, and what does it say? Amalek ashikacha baderach. It happened to you on the way. It's a happenstance. Nothing. It says Rabbi Tzadok says, what is Amalek? Amalek is what? Who do they believe in? They believe in nothing. That's what they believe. They believe in absolutely nothing. The Midrash compares Amalek to a dog. Why to a dog? When a dog gets hit by a stick, he gets angry at the stick, not at the person that hit them. Now Amalek, they see whatever is going on right now, they see there's no one behind it. There's nothing behind it. It's just a stick that I have to be bothered by. The Amalek is dealing with a concept of there's nothing there. The atheism concept. There's nothing there. What? Like everything is coincidence. Exactly. Everything is random. Everything is a coincidence. Nothing comes from God. This leads to a tremendous amount of ingratitude. I was once speaking with an agnostic, right? Someone who's not sure if there is a God or if there's not a God. He was pretty sure that there was not a God, but he still called himself agnostic, so I'll call him agnostic. I asked him, and I said, did a miracle ever happen to you? Now, before I tell you what he answered, think about your own life. Did you ever have a miracle that happened to you? I could guarantee you, every single one who could think about it, think about something miraculous. Now, I don't mean that you're falling out, not you, that somebody's falling out of a plane and lands on a flying ostrich, which is in itself a miracle, and then they float down into into the ocean, and then a dolphin comes, and they ride the dolphin, to Hawaii, and they have a great vacation, and the dolphin comes, they pick him up, and they go back. I'm not talking about that type of miracle. I'm talking about like a miracle that you open your eyes and be like, wow, how did that just happen? Even if you're driving, and you just miss the car by like that much. That's a miracle. So if you look in your life, you'll see not one, but thousands of miracles. The more that you're perceptive and the more that you open your eyes, the more miracles you will see. So I go to this person, I say, did you ever have a miracle? He says, no. I said, never? You never had one miracle? He says, never. I never had a miracle. So that's very, very sad. That's the guy, I guarantee you had a miracle. So how can you be so ungrateful that you can't even appreciate that you don't have any miracle? I asked him another question. This is a very famous few questions that I asked to these type of people. When you get up to heaven, what are you going to tell God? What are you going to tell God? He had a few choice words to say. Most of them were 4 letters. And it wasn't love and faith, which is not 4 letters, but if you're counting. No one's an atheist. Everyone believes. They just choose not to. But yeah, obviously, he became so passionate that how could he even he had a whole speech planned out. And he was like, yeah, exactly, go figure. So he was like, no, he was saying a bunch of things. Like, how ungrateful could a person be? This is what the Torah says. It says when somebody is going and someone denies God, that is the most ungrateful act that you could do. Look what God has given you. Look at what God has done for you, and you're denying the existence of the person, of the entity that gave you everything. That is extreme ingratitude. Comes Purim. Purim is a time where we eradicate ingratitude. That's Amalek. We get rid of it. Timcha et zecha Amalek. Why? Because this is a time that we have to be grateful. How much more can we be grateful to the fact that we were brought back to life? We were resurrected from the dead. Can you be any more grateful than that? Now let's plug it all into Purim and we'll finish off. Did I say we're finishing it off already? Okay. We're finishing off times 2. Which means I have one more finishing off. So, the party of Achashverosh. What was the party of Achashverosh? He wanted to make a party. There was a calculation. The calculation was that after 70 years, the Jews are going to return back to their Holy Land. They're going to build the temple. It's going to be the second temple. This is where it was. And people made a calculation. And guess what? Many people obviously started the wrong date. Actually, all of them did. But they came to a point in time. Achashverosh came to a point in time and says, hey, 70 years are up today. And the Jews are still here. So he made a party. What was the purpose of the party? The purpose of the party was to bring the Jewish people down. Because if the Jewish people are brought down spiritually, then hopefully in his mind, that God is not going to go and take them out back into the Holy Land. So what was the focus of the party? One of the main focuses was it was a party of wine, which is why we have a mitzvah, we drink wine. What was the party of wine? To the extent that Achashverosh went, and you got the wine the age that you are alive. Meaning that if you're a 60-year-old person, you got a 60-year-old wine. And not only you got the 60-year-old wine, you got it in a very expensive cup. And you got to keep the cup. Which means is the more that you drink, the more cups that you get. And it wasn't plastic. It was, gold laden with gems, and it was expensive cups. So it was a party that was enveloped around wine. Why wine? Because there's an opinion that the Etz Hadas was grapes. Meaning that it was wine. That was the opinion. It was wine. So what was Achashverosh trying to do? Achashverosh was trying to remind God of the first sin. He says, don't save anybody without worth it. Putting them in the first sin, that puts it in a sense of reminding God of the sin of the Etz Hadas. Now, what was the sin of the Etz Hadas? There was 2 sins. Number 1, there was a sin of Hakarat Hatov. There was ingratitude. What was the ingratitude? Because Adam went and he ate from the tree. And what did he say? He says, the woman that you gave it to me. That is extreme ingratitude. We say Rashi. This is what Rashi says. This is a level of ingratitude. There was another concept, another sin in the sin of the Etz Hadas, and that was jealousy. What was the jealousy? Because Nachash, the snake, told Chava and said, "Listen, you are not allowed to eat from the tree. Why? Because God knows that if you eat from the tree, you'll become like God." Chava says, "Wait a minute. I could become like God?" He says, I could be something that I'm not. That's jealousy. He says, I want to be like God. So she went and she ate from the tree. So you had 2 here, two of the, could say of the few sins that we're focusing on today. The sins of the Etz Hadas is, 1 is Hakarat Hatov. There's a lack of gratitude. And number 2 is jealousy. Now, this is what Haman wanted to try to invoke on the Jewish people. But we know that God works midah keneged midah. The same things that Haman wanted to bring in the Jewish people, this is the same exact things that he fell in. Listen to how beautifully this works out. Oh, this is so beautiful. What was jealousy? Haman had everything. He had money, Fower is fame and fame. If you were not familiar with that, it's a new word I just made up. He had Fower. He had tremendous amount of, he had children. He had family. He had everything going on for him. But he didn't have one thing. What was that one thing? He didn't have one person bowing down to him. Everything he had, but one person bowing down to him, he didn't have. This is the jealousy that he had. He had everything, but this bothered him so much that he was willing to risk so much just for this one person. What was that Hakarat Hatov? Mordechai and Haman were both generals in Achashverosh's army. For everyone remembers when we did the Purim story, which I would recommend to re-listen to every single year because it's a very, very important to know what you're celebrating and the story based on the Midrashim. We have a 3 series on Torah in time. So, Haman and Mordechai were generals. And the king gave them a certain amount of food for a certain amount of time. Mordechai, if I'm not mistaken, it was 3 years. Mordechai rationed everything out. Haman was throwing parties. Within a short period of time, he used up all his rations. So he was a general of a large army, and Mordechai was a general of a large army. So Haman goes over to Mordechai and says, please, you got to do me a favor. You got to share with me your food. I'm out. He says, what do you mean you're out? You have so much time left over here. I says, I'm out. So Mordechai says, so what are you going to give it to me? You're going to have to make a trade over here. So they gave him, they made a deal that Haman is going to be Mordechai's slave, and whatever. They wrote it as a contract, as well on the metal plate that goes on the foot. In any case, Mordechai saved Haman. He said, because if Ahasuerus found out that Haman was the one who used up all his rations, he's done. It's not like, okay, one more chance, I'll send you, but this time be careful. No, it doesn't work that way back then, right? There was no liberal government. It'd be like, you're done. That means you're done, right? Please have your head by the morning on my, table. And the head was on the table in the morning. So like, there was no like, ifs, ands, but, which means Mordechai saved Haman's life. And now, what a type of ingratitude that you have. So the person that you're technically his slave is not bowing down to you. That's a level of hakarat hatov that you have. Even furthermore, we know that in Megillat Esther it says Haman ben Abedata Hagagi. Haman comes from Agag. Who was Agag? Agag was from Amalek, and Shaul HaMelech. By the way, Mordechai comes from Shevet Binyamin, which comes from Shaul HaMelech. Mordechai was a descendant from Shaul HaMelech. Haman was a descendant from Agag. Now, what happened from Shaul and Agag? Shaul decided that he is going to let he let Agag live, and long story short, it was through sorcery he was able to turn himself into an animal, and then he was able to escape. And because Shaul had mercy on Agag, then he was able to procreate, and that's why Haman is alive today. Meaning, because of the mercy that Shaul had, the Haman is alive today. Meaning that if not for Mordechai's ancestor, Haman would not be here. So on two folds, he was ingrateful. Number one, the fact that his ancestor is the only reason that you're around today. Number two, he himself is the only reason that you're around today because he saved your life when you're dealing with money, when you're dealing with food of the king. This is what Haman failed. So the two things that he wanted to go and pin on the Jewish nation is the fault that he fell down. He didn't have a hakarat hatov, and he had jealousy. This is what we do on Purim. We do exactly the opposite, and we focus on hakarat hatov, and we focus on jealousy. What do we do on Purim? On Purim, we don't show any jealousy at all. What do we do? That anybody who asks, we give. We go and we put in ourselves as a pay that if everybody dresses up. There's no one better than anybody else. We're dressing up, we're all the same. You take the jealousy out of everything. You're giving gifts to everybody else. You're not jealous of anybody else. The concept of Purim is very, very much around the concept of removing jealousy. And also of hakarat hatov. How do we do hakarat hatov? We are so grateful to God that we have an obligation that we read publicly the Megillah. We read publicly the Megillah, we make a bracha on it. And you have an obligation to go and listen to the Megillah because we publicize, look what God did for us. Even furthermore, how do you give someone who has everything? How do you give God? God has everything. You can't give God anything. But if you help his children, then it counts like you're giving something to God. So we have also the idea of tzedakah. Whoever goes and asks, any one of God's children, you don't look into it. They ask, you give. Why? Because we have so much hakarat hatov to God that we help any one of his children that come and ask. Haman wanted to bring everybody down from the sin of the tree. What did he get hung on? The tree. The same tree that he wanted to go and bring down, he was the one who came crashing down. We see over here a very, very important and fundamental concept. The idea of having happiness on Purim is extremely, extremely important, but it's not only have happiness on Purim, it's happiness on everything in life. What is the goal for that? Look at the story of Purim. The more grateful that you are, the more happier that your life is going to be. The less grateful, making up a lot of words today. The less grateful that you are, the less happier that you're going to be. The obligation is that we have to contemplate. We have to realize that we were all signed for death on Purim. And we came back to life. How much more gratitude that you have to be, you have to give, that you have to realize that you're here as a gift. You're here as something that you realize you saw the end. Sometimes you don't appreciate what we have until it's gone. Well, guess what? That's Purim. You have to think about it. You have to appreciate what you have because technically you are gone. Any questions? No questions? Okay, wow.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.